What is going on, guys? This is Taking Names episode 10. This is my playthrough of Elden Ring, featuring the best bits, the highlights, the boss battles, and we are in Nokron Eternal City trying to take down Valiant Gargoyles, as you saw in the opening there. And I skipped through a whole ton of areas here where you're fighting over rooftops. There weren't too many difficult enemies there. And this is the first boss fight of the area, which is the Mimic Tear, which is essentially a mirror image of your character. Now, normally I would actually like these mirror image fights because that's going to show you if you're fighting in an optimal way, because he has the same movesets, he has the same damage as you, so it should tell you whether you are fighting well or not. However, because you can actually use the lone wolves here, and they can attack the Mimic Tear in 3 different directions, I do feel like this boss fight was a little bit too easy, especially if you're using lone wolves. And as you can see, using lone wolves, I was able to get his health down to about half before I had to fight him one-on-one. And as you can see, he got me good there, but I don't really try to cut out too many of my embarrassing moments. I actually think they're kind of fun. If I cut stuff out, it's usually because of time. So I think this is a bit of a disappointing fight, and I think they shouldn't have made it so you can use ashes here, because that gives you a bit of an advantage, especially when the enemy has the same moveset as you do. And one more thing I wanted to add is that he doesn't really have that many moves either. He only has the same limited moveset as you do, so he's a little bit uninteresting in that way. Now, moving on to the next section, they have you fight these deer men again, which by now is a little bit overused, I think, especially given that they have used them in Learning of the Lakes and then down in Siofra River a lot, and now also down in the Nokron Eternal City area. So I know it's all kind of tied into the lore here, but we've seen them for about 30 hours. But essentially here, you need to light these flames for these pillars. There's 6 of them before you can go and do the boss fight of the area, which is the Regal Ancestor spirits. Now, I actually did this section after Valiant Gargoyles, but I thought it would fit better here if I put it in the middle of the level. The Regal Ancestor Spirit boss fight is very much like the regular Ancestor Spirit boss fight. He does have a few extra moves that you got to watch out for, but aside from that, I think the difficulty is relatively similar. Now, I was actually pleased about that because with the Dragonkin Soldier of Noxtella, he was much tougher, and you had to fight him first, and then you fought Dragonkin Soldier, which was easier. So here, I think it makes more sense that the Regal Ancestor Spirit has a few more extra moves than the regular Ancestor Spirits. One thing that is becoming clearer as I play through this game is that the boss fights are really falling into 2 main categories. One, which is the beast form, which is something like the Regal Ancestor Spirit or the Falling Star Beast or dragons, for example. And the other type of boss battle is, of course, the humanoid enemies like the Crucible Knights or the Mimic Tears. And they have very different types of movesets to the beast's movesets. The beasts like to jump and stomp on you and do attacks with its head or its legs. And the humanoid enemies, they carry weapons like a sword or a poleaxe, that sort of thing. But it almost feels like the humanoid enemies are more interesting to fight with their movesets. Speaking of move, it's time to move on to the next section, which is this area here where you're going to do a little bit of sidetracking. You need to jump down to the rooftops here, and this area is called Knight's Sacred Ground. And you're coming into this section here to look for a very important item for Rani's quest line. And there are some very interesting platforming bits at the start of this area, and I was lucky to just make that one. But you'll eventually make your way to this building with the iron ball, which if you go down there, it will start chasing you around. But you want to find this room, which is guarded by this Nox priestess, but he is pretty easy to take down by this stage. And he's guarding this treasure, which is a really special item. It's the Mimic Tear Ashes. And what that's going to allow you to do is summon essentially a mirror image of yourself, kind of like that boss fight that we watched earlier. So if you've watched other Elden Ring videos, you've probably seen this Ashes in action before, And he is pretty overpowering because essentially you're getting co-op without it being co-op, and you're almost doing twice the amount of damage, or at least you are attacking from two sides at once, or you're keeping enemies occupied. The other thing that is really important in this section is this treasure chest here, which is going to give you the Fingerslayer blade, and that's a really important quest item for Rani's quest line. So make sure in this area you go and get that. Now you're going to have to make this long jump down to the Siofra aqueduct because this is on the way to fighting the Valiant Gargoyles. But before you do that, you got to fight this guy with this shield. I believe he is called the Crucible Knight, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But he's fairly tough, and he's definitely tougher than a regular enemy, and if you beat him you don't actually fight him again. But I thought I was going to try and be a little bit clever here and try and hide from him, but I was totally shocked that he was able to hit me through this wall. Maybe it's a glitch, maybe it happens all the time that enemies can hit you through walls, but I was not expecting that at all. I wish I got my reaction, but I got my revenge straight after in the next battle, because he has this move where he's rushing towards you, and if you position yourself well enough, he actually flies through the door. So I was able to even that up a little bit. Alright, now it's time for the Valiant Gargoyles, which I really do think this is the hardest boss fight up to this point. There's nothing that actually comes close, really. And that's because you got to fight two of them at once, and they don't give you a lot of time to get rid of the first one. So I've cut in a ton of deaths here because I really did die a lot. It took me about 3 hours, and I think counting back, I probably had about 10 to 15 deaths in an hour, so I probably died about 50 times in this guy. But he was really difficult for me, and I think part of the reason is that he has so many interesting moves. He's actually a really well designed boss, except for one problem that I found, which is his poison breath. And that is a problem with the poison breath because you can't get near him, so it gives him almost invincibility for like 10 or 15 seconds, and you have this second gargoyle that comes at you, and so you're trying to get rid of the first one, but you can't because the first one puts down this poison breath, which means you can't go near him for like 10-15 seconds. So the boss fight really is kind of favoring the Valiant Gargoyles for a good like couple of minutes there while there's two of them. So this is the full boss fight, and this is the first phase where you're just fighting one Valiant Gargoyle, and you can take your time here because what you want to do here is conserve your flasks of Crimson Tears or your health potions so that you have enough of them for the second boss fight. So he actually has a very wide range of moves, and he has moves where he can hit you from the other side of the screen, and he has moves that are medium attacks, which are probably his strongest attacks, where he swings the axe, where if you're actually really close he can't actually get you, but if you're a medium distance away he can really hurt you with his sword or with his axe. And so as you can see, like you can go right underneath him and you don't even need to actually block or anything. But to deal with enemies very close to him, he will do this poison breath, which means you can't get near him. And also he will also stomp on the ground as well, which means he can get you that way too. Now once you get him to around 60% of your health, you do want to use your Mimic Tear ashes or any type of ashes that you think will bring an advantage to this fight. And that is because when you get him down to 50%, the second Valiant Gargoyle is going to come in the game, and he takes maybe like 20 seconds to get there. You really do want to fight him on the other side of the screen, so it takes longer for the second gargoyle to get there. And I did get a little bit lucky here because the second one actually put down the poison breath, which gave me an extra maybe 10 seconds or so to get him down, and that was really cool how I somehow just teleported from hitting him around the back to hitting him on the head. But I got lucky here because I was able to take down the first Valiant Gargoyle very quickly. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you can just get caught in the middle of the two of them, and they will just kill you, almost one-shot you, because one will hit after the other. But I was lucky that I got rid of the first one and still had my Mimic Tear. And here, all I really needed to do was just be extra careful that I didn't die, because I got through the most difficult part of the fight, which was the moments where there are 2 gargoyles. But once you get it down to 1, you can fight him like the first phase, and you can take your time. Even though the second one is a little bit harder, I think because when he uses the twin blade, he's a little bit more difficult to fight because they can hit you a lot of times with that twin blade. So right now in this part of the boss fight, I'm really trying to manage the number of health potions that I have, because I'm thinking with 5 of them, this is a pretty even fight. It could go either way at this point, so I'm just really focusing on not getting hit. And also I was trying to be extra careful whenever he had his twin blade. I felt like I could be a little bit riskier when he was using his axe. Come to think of it, this might be the first time you're fighting a giant enemy with a twin blade, so that also makes the second phase a little bit more difficult as well. By the time you get to the second phase, you probably haven't been in the second phase that many times. So it's a little bit trickier to learn all of his moves and when to actually roll. Whereas in the first phase, you're fighting that first gargoyle, you've probably done it a ton of times. Like I said, I probably did it 50 times, and by that stage, you kind of have the attacks and you know when to roll through them. Now at this stage I have 4 flasks of Crimson Tears, and I knew that if I was just able to manage my health potions and I was able to manage my health above 80%, I probably wasn't going to get one-shotted most of the time, especially with that tower shield as well. What I was really trying to do is just wait for a really good opening, not be too risky here, and make for a clear opening where I could get right under him, and then I would be able to finish this fight off. And there you go, that must have taken me 50 tries or more, but I finally did it and I defeated the Valiant Gargoyles. And that is it for this video. Remember guys, if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button and also subscribe so you get more of my Elden Ring videos, and I will see you in the next episode.